Our perception of money is changing rapidly, and banks are at the center of all of it. From how we access it, to how we buy, to how we trust that that money will be there when we need it. I'm Kiah Haslett, the creator of Fintech Takes Banking. Here on Bank Nerd Corner, I talk with bankers, economists, academics, and more about the complex dynamics shaping the financial services landscape. This week on Bank Nerd Corner, I'm joined by Madeline Fredin, Vice President of Partnership Strategy at Alloy Labs Alliance. Madeline's nerd status is cemented with her spiffy new glasses, but we talk about the other area of banking and technology where she's nerding out currently, helping Alloy Labs institutions figure out how to deploy AI. Madeline kicks us off with the parable of the IBM chessbot that demonstrates how AI figures out new ways to accomplish tasks. We then discuss the unique technology moment we're at right now, where there is a pretty level playing field for all institutions interested in different AI applications. That is, if they can figure out how to oversee and govern these agents. And that's a big if. Finally, she has some recommendations for how bankers can get comfortable with AI. Hey, Madeline, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Kiah. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I just wanted to compliment you. Welcome to the Glasses Club. It's never too late to start wearing glasses, and congratulations on getting your first pair as an adult. How does it feel to be God's favorite child?
Honestly, great. I was looking for another accessory. And so, the options endless. I've always been a little bit jealous. I was the kid in elementary school that was also jealous of kids with casts.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I feel like it's kind of like a cast for your face. But
Right.
yeah, I wish that there was maybe like signature room.
You seem like someone who would wear glasses. I mean that as a compliment. I wouldn't say that as a compliment to everyone, but if anyone's watching on the video, your glasses look very good. We are both wearing our glasses because we are serious people who look at screens all day. And I am so excited to have you join us. Tell me about yourself, in addition to this new development of accessories, and then how you work with banks.
Yeah. So, one of the pieces of my background that's less obvious online is that I feel like an honorary member of the Nerd Corner. Both my husband and I are, true members of that nerd club. We have been uh, fans of AI since OpenAI first released ChatGPT, and so
Before it was cool.
before it was cool, he also works in AI. But the fun thing, he studied bioethics when we were dating. He was in grad school, and his emphasis was in AI. So our third date was actually a watch of the movie Ex Machina. If you haven't seen it, would highly recommend. I burst into tears at the end of it. He was expecting a very intellectual conversation. I was overwhelmed by what this means for the future of feminism going
Sure.
forward. So that's
Sure.
a whole other conversation we can get into. But our meal times are usually dominated with conversations like, have you tried the new model? What's the future of, context graphs? And, what did you build today in Claude Code? So
Amazing.
I bring that nerd energy to our consortium of community banks. Alloy Labs is a membership for, about 90 banks or so. We have conversations that span the gamut: strategy, business model, marketing. One of the hats that I wear is running our Automation AI Center of Excellence. So I'm talking to our
Wow.
members about this on the daily. So it's a lot of fun. So that's pretty much how I work with the banks. We're consultants, membership facilitators, and it's a good time.
So I have heard that AI is finally of interest to banks. I'm sure you've also done the work of trying to explain it and make it approachable. And it felt like a couple of years ago, you were just like, I don't know, arguing with a wall about this. And then I think was it ChatGPT 3 or 4 came out, and all of a sudden everyone was like, well, I must know about it. And then but still scared, but at least they were reading the articles. And then they have now become significantly more interested in trying to adopt it. And I don't know if that's been your experience too, or if you want to share anything about kind of that like mindset of interest, but also like, where do you see banks in the consortium using AI? And then like what kind of use cases have come out?
Yes, I will say almost all of the interest stems from personal use, where I think everybody starts in the safety of their personal apps and is like, okay, I'm getting comfortable with this. I'm getting addicted to this. I really hope that my bank will let me keep using this. So it's really a spectrum of adoption. We see like some of the banks in our alliance we've started an autonomous bank work group where, under the assumption that we're not that far away from potentially a bank being able to operate at scale with less than 10 people.
Whoa.
Thinking about this, they have these concepts of blackout factories, whereas like we don't need lights because all of our employees are actually machines. It's like that concept of a blackout bank. It's like, are we coming to a world where a lot of the daily operations are actually handled autonomously? We have a group of banks that is interested, exploring, and thinking critically about that future and what we can learn.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a limited portion of our banks. I would say the majority, we're doing Copilot Studio training and we're figuring out how do we use generative AI to help us rewrite emails, to summarize meeting transcripts. So there's still, I would say, a lot of learning going on. The initial use cases, and I think this is wise, figure out what is low risk, what do you have the data for? Two great filters to at least get started. These are not high ROI use cases. It's just you need to get started on the maturity curve somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, the first use case I usually see most banks adopting is let's build a Copilot agent, also not actually an agent, but we will get into my hatred of Copilot's naming conventions later. But build a Copilot agent to basically be a policy bot of, you can load in all of your policies and procedures, natural language querying. This is a great place to dip your toe into more of those specialized assistants. So that's a favorite. We've seen teller assistants for banks that actually have access to customer data and can feed that into Copilot agents as well. Like, hey, you're having a conversation. Do you have context for all the products that customer has? And maybe if you've dabbled with machine learning, like could you even, have some predictions or suggestions of what they might use next?
Yeah.
That's popular. So things like that.
Those I think are great. It's interesting because I don't know if in 2026, um, it's always like it's better to start than never start, and you start where you stand. But you're kind of like, man, like a policy bot, yes. So, but the learning I think is good, and again, you got to start somewhere. So when we were talking ahead of this recording, we talked a little bit about different types of AI. And you also alluded to that with the working groups, right? We have an autonomous bank and we have Copilot, quote unquote, agents. So, one type of AI or machine learning is robotic process automation, RPA. That's kind of an older type. And I think, in my experience or my perception, this was a type of technology or capability that was available to banks years ago. And perhaps they were also a little hesitant to adopt it then, or maybe not sold on the benefits. And now we have significantly more powerful types of AI like agentic and generative. And it seems like the RPA adoption is now here. So tell me a little bit about this kind of adoption of technology from the RPA continuum all the way to agentic.
I think it's hilarious that RPA is so popular now because as a consultant, I scoped numerous RPA projects. All of them were rejected because it is expensive. And when they found out how much was going to be required to maintain it and it breaks all the time, we're like, this is terrible technology. Who would use this? And now, the most inflammatory thing I said on a COE last year was that RPA is dead. AI has killed it. And I have never seen such an emotional outpouring in support of RPA as I did during that Automation AI COE from our bankers. Um, it's interesting. So RPA, we'll put it in the camp of this is deterministic. It's like code. You can tell it exactly what you want and how you want it done, and it will do it pixel by pixel, which is great for those kinds of workflows that you actually can say with absolute certainty, this is how the work needs to get done. Agentic AI also this is an automation technology. This is what we would call non-deterministic,
Okay.
where based on just how these large language models are trained, you are going to get a little bit of variation, but it's still capable of being given a goal and achieving that goal. So with this, the processes and procedures that banks use that they have been tried, tested, blessed by regulators, there's a lot of comfort in being able to tell a bot not only what I want done, but I want to be able to tell you exactly how I want it done.
The control
And
element.
that control of like, oh, like, but autonomous agents don't necessarily give you that same degree of control over process. And honestly, it's like when I think about the vision for automation, one of our banks gave this analogy that I thought was great, where community banks, one to another, can be compared to DNA, where human DNA, person to person, is 99% the same, but it's that 1% where our genes are expressed differently that create all kinds of beautiful diversity. Same thing can go for the community bank, where a lot behind the scenes, deposit ops, compliant ops, like everybody is doing the same thing. Your customers don't care how you do this. It needs to get done, but they don't care. It's not where you win.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity with AI today is to apply automation to all of that 99% and redeploy your energy and resources to the 1% that differentiates you. Historically, there's not that many deterministic workflows in that 99%. Using AI gets us a lot closer to, okay, we can realistically start to talk about meaningful portions of this 99%.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting. I've worked on a couple of projects that are about generative AI and credit memos. And the thing I always come back to is like, your bank is not known for how great your credit memos are in a way that like for me, right? Like my writing is how people know me. And so that would be something I would really want to protect but the credit memo itself is like, nope, no one, like the amount of time you should spend crafting that thing, especially for something where there wasn't a lot of change from the when you made the loan or from the last time you wrote the credit memo, right? Like you just want to make sure it's up to date. Like I always come back to thinking that like that helps me understand why this is like the outcome would be an acceptable use case, and then you'd want to kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah, it's other than your writing, is there anything else as you empathize with the banks that you would put on that list of, oh, I get this. Like I'm kind of protective. I'm kind of mad that AI would come and move my cheese. Like I like this part, even though maybe it's not essential to how I differentiate. But I don't emotionally, I don't like the idea of AI doing that.
Yeah, I sometimes like think that. I mean, me personally, and this is, my workflow is very different from a bank, and I want to be so clear about that. But we were kind of joking before we started recording that sometimes I feel like I have to have all the information directly inputted into my brain. And that's the only valid way for me to process. And I think that's useful for creativity, but there's a lot of information on the internet, and there's a lot of history that I'm not aware of. And so learning how to use AI to be assistive in research um, so I don't have to read every single law review article that was written about a certain topic, while also being able to find sourcing better. Like I don't have to just rely on my own ability to go find a source and Google, like basically search all of Google for the source itself. That's been something I've been thinking about with AI, because like poking around on the internet for like I was just looking at a 1980 Iowa Attorney General legal opinion about
Deep
how they
cut.
interpret Didmika. Do you know the amount of Googling I was doing to try to find this like PDF from 1980? And I was able to use AI to find that thing for me. It was not a good use of my time to go try to find something from 40 years ago.
Great use case.
So you had a story to tell me, a little parable, and we don't have very many business parables. So I was excited to hear this. Tell me the parable of the IBM chessbot.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So, thinking back to mid 20th century, when some of AI technology is new, there was this assumption that even though we were calling it artificial intelligence, it would never be smart enough to beat somebody at chess because chess is the epitome of human intelligence and strategy. And, a computer could never. And it was for many years, for decades, proved true, where these bots were being trained. They were being given all of this training on chess strategy. How do you win a chess game? And when put into a game against a champion, would lose. And so the haters were, proved right for decades until 1997. We've got Gary Kasparov versus IBM's Deep Blue. And spoiler, he lost. Gary lost to IBM's Deep Blue. And this was the first of its kind. The issue with this, and this has played out multiple times now, is that how Deep Blue won was it applied the general method of search of if you are in a chess game and you are presented with your pieces in the chessboard, there are n number of, I guess I should say x number of potential moves you can make. Deep Blue, basically through brute force, was able to determine what's the best next move by basically trying all of them.
Okay.
And this was despised because compared to human strategies, which we don't have that kind of compute available to us mentally, we rely on other ways of learning and coming to the right decision. This was not an elegant win. And we didn't like it because Deep Blue rejected all of our training, all of the strategies that were hard won by the masters, the pinnacle of human intelligence. And so what did we do? We said, oh, we're just going to move the goalpost. We're just going to kick it and say, it's not actually chess. Chess has limited, but Go, the game of Go, that
Right.
has way more options. A machine can never beat a human champion in Go. 20 years later, we have Google's DeepMind AlphaGo product that wins against the Go champion. And so this is the lesson that keeps repeating itself. And it is, if you've ever read, I recommend The Bitter Lesson. It's a canonical essay that captures this challenge of we have seen that these methods like search and learning scale with compute. They will always beat out any method that does not scale with compute. So you take that and you apply
Okay.
it to the conversation we just had of RPA versus autonomous agents. The RPA is the original chessbot. It's trained on how that we love to tell it exactly how to do things.
Yeah.
Autonomous agents are Deep Blue that's trained on and have these large language models that do scale with compute. So even though today they're not great and they really should not be trusted to automate your bank in entirety, if you are going to make a bet for every dollar you spend on RPA that you are not spending on autonomous agents, you are making the wrong bet.
Interesting.
I'm going to leave it there. That's the point I would like to make with that parable.
I also we're it's we're just getting a lot of useful data too about kind of the power of the brute force method of agentic AI, I guess. Or in, at least in these cases, the games. So you know, new technology can level the playing field for banks. And especially, and this is really exciting because when new technology comes out, like everyone has an equal opportunity to like adopt it. There's no one's like ahead of this tech race. We're all at the starting line. Can you explain this theory to me, or why community banks need to keep this in mind and what it means for their AI adoption cycle?
Yes. When I think about the ways that AI can level the playing field for community banks, there are really two vectors that I think about. One, economies of scale. and two would be access to talent. So a lot of banks, a lot of community banks that they don't have a lot of resources. And so but yet they're still under the same obligations to comply with regulation, to operate safely, soundly, to mitigate risk. There's a lot of, I guess, fixed operational cost, so to speak,
Sure.
within a community bank. And so there's ways of competing that do scale with volume, that you're able to make investments that you otherwise would not be able to. I believe that AI is one of the paths to achieving economies of scale without actually operating with scale. So we can come back to that. But that would
Yeah.
be the first way that I see AI leveling the playing field for a smaller bank. The second is this access to talent that has always been a limiting factor of, especially if you're in these more rural communities, or you're not able to maybe compete on salary in the way that you've been able to get the kind of knowledge. You now have tools that equip your team that you have hired with access to research, to PhD level analysis. To quote, I love some of OpenAI's press releases, that every knowledge worker has been leveled up,
Hmm.
notably also in the world of code. There's lots of reasons the labs focused on coding first, but for a lot of community banks, development talent has not been available. And now, for the first time, I would say we have radical new access to development technology or development capabilities that were not available before. So those two factors level the playing field. But as in any cycle before, playing fields do not stay leveled. That
Sure.
this is a temporary situation to be able to take advantage, because uh, this window does shut where it becomes a necessary investment in order to stay in the game. There is a chance to play offense, to use this technology in ways your peers are not, to meaningfully win. That will close. It will move to the bottom end of the competitive spectrum, and it will become necessary to just stay in the game.
Yeah. So, how long do you think banks have to do this? Like, we talked a little bit about ChatGPT 3 and how that kind of changed, for me, bankers' interest in AI without necessarily leading to a lot of adoption. We're a couple of years from that now. And it seems like agentic AI is more of focus. How long do you think the playing field will stay kind of level before that, the haves and have not start appearing?
It's a good question. It's not as though AI is a product in and of itself that, the bank that has it, they're going to win the customers.
Right.
So when I think about it's like, okay, how does a bank actually win with AI? I think part of it is better insight into customers that are not yours, and you can go make better offers to them. That's one way that banks with AI will win. Um, you can differentiate on product. If you have successfully used AI to automate and to lower your operational costs, now you have more capital at your to deploy within your business. So you are able to outinvest, you can outprice. And so these are things that are going to just put pressure on the ecosystem. And so, how long is a really interesting question. And I would actually point to, I know, Kiah, you've done a lot of reporting on charter mania going on in the US right now, where the charter window is open and we
Right.
are seeing incumbent fintechs, neobanks from, other countries all see it's open season. A lot of these are companies that are, if not AI native, at least we're digitally native.
Right.
Their operating expenses are significantly lower than your traditional community bank. You add into that now a lower cost of capital, and they are better positioned on every front
Yeah.
to win in this space. So I feel the urgency. I do not operate a bank. I feel a lot of urgency on their behalf to figure this out quickly.
Yeah. And to add to your point about the new charter entrants, they also are probably pretty good at data, like from the from their inception, and will not have the data issues that banks have. Um, well, and I also sometimes wonder too if banks' ability to adopt different types of AI will be hamstrung by data, or there will always have to be some sort of like data governance quality scrubbing component of any AI initiative they do, because that problem wasn't actually addressed in the 15 years since the financial crisis.
Oh, tell me about it. And you mentioned before of, oh, anybody can jump into this. I will say there have been so many technical revolutions that a lot of community banks have either kicked the can down the road or sat on the sidelines, say, I don't see the value. And it's like, I think there have been people saying like, hey, we need to unify our data. We've spread it across all these systems. And I think it's fair to say is like with data and analytics, it was hard to see is like, are we really going to get the value? If we spend $1 million to do this, where is the ROI in that? And I think we are seeing the answer play out now. And a lot of community banks that wish that they had made that investment already, but who aren't well positioned to start using AI because they failed to migrate to the cloud, to unify their data, to do these things that tech builds on itself. It's such a good lesson learned of like maybe at that point we couldn't fully see it, but it might have been worthwhile
Yeah.
laying that foundation now that we have access to this tech.
Yeah, and again, you got to start where you stand. I don't think it's ever like kind of too late, but I think there is something really powerful to like really internalize that lesson of like if we had done X number of things 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, what position would we be in today? And what are we going to do with that information? What does that mean for the next decision we make? And, sometimes I think banks are slow to make decisions, or a lot of wait and see over here. That can be interpreted as not taking risk. And because action is seen as taking risk. And I know that, the banking regulators have spoken about this, like not acting is increasingly a risk.
It is. I know we were going to talk about some of Mike Sue's papers in a little bit, but one thing we had a conversation at the Spring Labs Banking Summit last fall. One of the things we were talking about was the inflection point where something goes from being too risky to do to too risky not to do. And it happened with digital and mobile, where for a while it felt like, wait a second, opening a bank account online? Absolutely not. This is we're just, sending out an invitation to fraudsters. But at some point, there was a recognition of like, actually, for the sake, the health, the relevancy of your bank into the future, you need this. And it is more risky to not do this to your overall mission.
Mhm.
And Mike made the argument that that inflection point is already happening with AI.
Okay, so
Which is terrifying.
AI agents working in a bank. Sounds scary, maybe to some bankers. But observability and actionability are discussed as two core precepts to govern these AI agents. So, thinking about community banks and their existing compliance and governance frameworks, what needs to change within those frameworks for banks to begin using agentic AI systems compared to what they do for governing RPA? And then how do the concepts of observability and actionability come up? I know that that's a lot of words. I just threw a lot of vocab words out at everyone. So just start breaking this down for me.
Well, I'll respond to your word salad with a regulation.
Okay, thank
SR
you.
11.7 is not going to be altogether helpful. I think
Okay.
there's some that hear, oh, LLMs, that's a model. We have model governance. How does this fit into our existing governance structures? And if you can figure out how to get a large language model to explain itself to you, please tell me. I would love to invest.
Perfect.
But this is a category of governance unto its own. So as we design these governance structures, it's helpful to go back to the first principles of governance of what are we trying to do here? First is we want to know if something is going wrong so that we can fix it and so that we can prevent it from happening again. And so when we think about generative AI, the concept of observability gets at the first piece. Like, do we at least have visibility into what it's doing, whether in the context of a chat or in the context of an agent taking action? Can we see how it's behaving and make sure that it's behaving the way that we want it to? So that's step
Okay.
one is observability. The second piece of that, of the actionability of, do we have mechanisms built in, whether that's human in the loop or others, that allow you to intervene and to take action to either fix or prevent things from happening in the future? Um, One of the examples that I think is super basic but is helpful, I imagine at this point, all of your listeners have at least interacted with a large language model chat interface. So you kind of know, that experience. And there's the concept of prompting where I'm going to give you a task that I want you to go do.
Mm-hmm.
So you can pretend that you are a, BSA AML analyst, and it's your job to work these alerts that your system has put on your plate. You could take the whole stick a large prompt in there and say, hey, this customer alerted. This is the data that I have. Tell me, do I need to file a SAR? Yes or no? And the large language model is going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to come back with an answer. If that answer is wrong, you have very limited capacity to determine, where did it go wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
What piece of data did it misinterpret or retrieve incorrectly? And so one of the mechanisms in this era of using, chat interfaces is chain of thought prompting, where you just break it up. It's like giving a baby bite-sized bites of, okay, I'm going to give you one piece of information and ask you to do one thing at a time so I can observe where this broke and I can fix that process. So super simple, but chain of thought prompting would recommend as a new control.
Is chain of thought prompting like a guardrail or a control that banks need to start adopting, or is that like a different thing?
I think it is. It's one of those where this is a brand new platform, brand new technology. So the controls look different
Sure.
than they have historically. So yes, like chain of thought prompting is a new thing in this age of generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I do think as you have teams that are working in these systems, that is a great control to include in there. I Guardrail is probably more appropriate
Yeah.
category for it, to help govern.
Do you have other examples of guardrails or controls that consortium banks might have come up with for overseeing AI agents?
Yeah, so a few things just for safety. For agents, one is the concept of like the AI gym. Before an AI agent gets into production, is like it needs to be tested against lots of different scenarios that it's going to encounter in the wild. And so you need an environment for it to experience those safely.
Huh.
I love the terminology here, but yes, it's a gym. It's
Yeah, that's a
exercising,
crazy like a place that you guys assigned this agent to.
right? Pump and iron,
Right.
gonna but it's kind of interesting because like, oh, they call this process agent hardening as well. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm just adding to my nomenclature guide every day. Um, but yeah, so that would be one of making sure that your agents are well tested. Like you wouldn't send a brand new teller out to go open accounts, whatever it might be, without any degree of training. Same thing where you have exposure to these scenarios. I would say a lot, once banks are getting to the point of having more than a handful of agents, having a platform that helps you not only monitor their accuracy, but also manage the expense, because that's another piece of this is making sure that you're optimizing your agents where, yes, we have frontier models that are really smart, you don't necessarily need the smartest large language model for every possible task. You can maybe get away with a small language model or a local
Mm,
model. So those, in terms of managing agents, there is governance, there are guardrails, um, there's testing, there's monitoring, and there's also optimization. And so I think there's a whole new category of these
yeah.
platforms that are coming online to help banks do that.
I think a conversation about AI and banks, it's sometimes we're talking about AI, the tool, and sometimes we're talking about the banks, the users of the tool. And there's a real like we could have perfect tools and not perfect adoption. And that's kind of a conversation about mindset and talent at banks. And I think this is kind of a broader conversation that AI is really like bringing to the forefront. And you probably also are holding as many hands as you are teaching minds, if that makes sense. For executives who can see AI's potential, but they feel scared, what are some immediate practical steps they can take to begin their journey of agent adoption?
I think every bank executive is holding these two feelings about the future simultaneously. One is this terrifies me. The other is, this is so cool and so powerful. I can't wait until our bank is fully AI enabled. And the ones that are successfully leading their banks to adoption have allowed that voice of excitement and vision, I would say, not overpower entirely, but at least take the lead. And I have not seen I'll say, a single community bank successfully pursue AI adoption without their CEO, their president, their executive leadership buying in that this is the future.
Mm,
And the way that that happens, I mentioned this before, those are the executives that on a Saturday on their personal computer, they have the $20 license to ChatGPT or Claude, and they're playing.
yeah.
That, if I had any advice to any executive, if you do not yet have Claude downloaded on your home computer and you are not figuring out how to use it personally, that is the number one thing you can do after this conversation. You're done listening to this podcast. Go download it. Go start playing. I actually had a really fun interaction with a chief lending officer at a bank here in the Midwest. And we were talking about the industry, got talking about AI. And I have one of my hobbies is coming up with businesses that I will never start. And I love telling people about these businesses I will never start. So here's another one for you. The cottage industry is on the rise, home bakers, that kind of thing. And regulation is actually softening in some states. I'm a sourdough baker, so I care about these things. And there is not a great platform for exchange. There's like Hot Plate, you can do big drops. There's Marketplace, but they're not well suited for the timeliness, the diversity, the regulations of the cottage industry. Anyway,
Okay.
so I put this out there as like, somebody needs to build this.
Like a DoorDash for cottage
Kind of.
producers.
Yes, it's like Etsy meets DoorDash, maybe
Okay.
something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
And again, chief lending officer, middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. 24 hours later, I get an entire business plan. It's like 28 pages
My
for
God.
how to structure this company, how to build the platform. Spoiler alert, there's a stable coin involved
Of
for
course.
making making these payments. But it was amazing. It's like this is somebody who is like helping their kid also build apps on the weekend.
Yeah.
So that is the type of play that leads to the kind of familiarity, confidence that's required to lead your bank into this era.
Yeah. Also another kind of mindset I think community bankers have almost as a default or a reflexiveness is that they buy instead of build, in part because of their talent restrictions and constraints, but they also just like never build anything. And your experimentation, your gym, where do I go buy these agents that are pre-hardened and ready to deploy? And what kind of needs to change within that buy versus build mindset to really like have agents that address our workflow, that fit within our governance, and that also like do what we want to do.
Mm. Oh, there's so much here. I'll start with the mentality of we don't build as a community bank. It is high time to reevaluate that. Partly, as we discussed earlier, where access to talent, development talent, for example, you probably already have people working for your bank that are qualified to build these agents, even if they were not computer science majors,
Yeah.
that they are like, if I can do it, you can do it. I promise you that. I had one banker, we were doing a co pilot demo and one of the banks, it was a business analyst sharing, and one of the bankers piped up and said, "Okay, but who did you hire to actually turn the knobs on the agents? Like there's like this behind." But he was already demonstrating Copilot Studio on screen. He was like, "You can see this. This is natural language. Like I did this. Like there's nothing more complicated behind the scenes here. Is like you can do this." So that would be that would be my first encouragement, is to reevaluate that assumption that you can't do it. Um, I I believe that SaaS is not dead. That's another conversation. However, in the world where banks are scaling from 5 to 50 to 500 agents, some of those can safely be built, managed, and maintained internally.
Okay.
And for the sake of cost effectiveness, it is good to have a mechanism of deciding which to build and which to buy, because it will become cost prohibitive to buy everything. And so I would say that most banks are going to end up with a portfolio. Some have bought, some that they have built internally.
That's interesting. I've been trying to play with Claude a little bit, and I've got this like source spreadsheet that I've had for decades, and I'm gonna have this little. I don't even know if it qualifies as an agent, but like I'm gonna have Claude go through that spreadsheet and like format it correctly, and
Ooh,
then uh update, like find the LinkedIn profiles of everyone on that list. And then if it needs to be updated where people like change jobs and stuff, or like the spreadsheet is old enough that like some people have died on the list. So and like this is useful, and then I would like Claude, the idea is that I would ask Claude like, hey, I'm writing a story about, let's say I'm writing a story about BSA AML SARS, like SARS. Can you find me anyone on this list who has FinCEN experience in their LinkedIn profile? Because I just can't go control F and I can't click on every single person in my spreadsheet. And then, and I'm hoping like, but like there's a series of things I needed to do with this spreadsheet before I can go ask it to go find someone who worked at FinCEN. Yeah, I've been thinking about my little like agent and like updating it and stuff. And
love it. It's a great use case for Claude Cowork that can actually do work on your computer.
right.
Um, and if you have never prompted Claude to the point where it tells you that is beyond my capabilities, you are leaving work on the table. If you, and truly, I think we have these assumptions like Claude could never do that. And is like, well, put it to the test. Ask
Yeah.
if it can do that. And that's going to be a great way for you to figure out what exactly are the limits, and am I fully taking advantage of the tools that I have access to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of Claude as my little research assistant slash intern. Um, so again, I think about what are the tasks I need to make sure I do myself, and then what can I like probably safely hand off. We've talked a little bit about some of the mentality, some of the obstacles, some of the real challenges, and things that will have to be genuinely change within banks for them to be on this agentic AI journey. And, to think like in the future, we'll probably be using more AI agents, not fewer AI agents. So that work is it's so important to start that work now and start it imperfectly, and assume you will refine processes and you will make processes that work for this new operating environment. Given everything we've talked about, are you hopeful that community banks can navigate and leverage agentic AI and play on that level playing field with the advantage they have now?
Oh, Kiah, I am an eternal optimist. And
You sound optimistic.
I am optimistic. I'm excited. Like when I think about this level playing field, I truly believe that community banks can and should take advantage of this moment to do that. Um, I I believe that this is actually not that difficult. There are questions that have to be sorted out around safety and like, okay, what do our people do once, we've, automated a lot of this operational work? But that is actually not that difficult. It's not as though there is the democratization of this technology is such that y- this is accessible by anyone, by any bank. And it's a matter of like the courage and the hard work required to do it safely.
Yeah.
None of these are non negotiables of like, you know what, we'll never figure this out. We'll never be able to take advantage. It's like, you really can. And
Yeah.
once you are able to answer some of those foundational questions, I think what I have seen is that backlog of like, what do we build next? What can we transform next? Grows so quickly. And you start to build, it's kind of like pushing a snowball down a mountain of like, oh, fantastic. Now I have more resources because that's what the whole point of this is freeing up more resources
Right.
to then be able to redeploy into these efforts. So um, to answer your question, I'm very hopeful and very excited. I know our banks at Alloy Labs have been working hard to help one another answer these questions of how do you do this safely? How do I actually start to push this and to build this momentum? And I think it's possible.
Well, Madeline, I am so excited to open my account at the First Black Box Bank. When one of your members stands that up, I will test run it. But thank you so much for joining me today. I'll keep you updated on my personal Claude journey with some on LinkedIn. And thank you for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Oh, I look forward to hearing more about it.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to this episode of Bank Nerd Corner. Stay up to date with news and trends in the bank space by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you love Fintech Takes Banking, please tell a friend. Talk to you next time.